In this episode, I want to make some changes to the program we created in the last episode, where we draw these circular gradients. And I want to review how we create functions and how do we load images. We will need these in the next episode. So the first thing I want to correct here is I call these variables r, like radius, and max r, like maximum radius. But the truth is this should be called diameter and not radius. Maybe you don't care so much about the name of the variable, but I think it's good to know the difference. So the radius is the distance between the center of the circle and the border. That's the radius. And the diameter is 2 times the radius. It's the distance from one side to the other. So the diameter is equal to 2 times the radius. And when we draw an ellipse, we send few parameters. We send x, y, width, and height. And you can see that the width of this circle is equal to the diameter. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to replace here everywhere where I wrote r. I'm going to say d, like max diameter. Here's d, max diameter, diameter again, max diameter, and finally down here it's 2 times. This is where we draw the ellipse. So did I miss? Yes, I missed 1 here. Now the program works and we have a better name for the variable. The next thing I want to improve is these 2 variables here don't need to be global because they are only used inside the setup function, nowhere else. We don't have any other functions. Well, we have draw, but that's empty. So what I can do is I can declare these variables here. I can say color C1 and color C2, and then I can get rid of these lines. So the program becomes a little bit shorter. It's good to have local variables whenever possible. So now the program still works. What I would like to do now is to draw these circular gradients wherever I click with the mouse. So it's not going to happen just one time when the program starts, like here, but every time I click the mouse, I will get a new gradient, a new circular gradient centered wherever the mouse is. So for that, we will need here a function, void mouse pressed. This function is executed every time the mouse is pressed or clicked. And for now, I can just print ln mouse x, print ln mouse y, just to see that it's working. So now when I run the program and if I click somewhere here, you can see down here the numbers. It's always 2 numbers. Near the top, it's going to be close to 0, 0. And near the bottom here, you can see the x is still small, but the y is getting closer to 400. Okay, so now what we need is a function to draw these circular gradients. I can call it draw circ grad. And where I want to draw it, so I will say here at mouse x, mouse y. The x and the y are uppercase. And I could also specify maybe the size. So I can say 200 for now. So let's get rid of our prints here. And now we have to define this function, this draw circ grad. So I'm going to say here void draw circ grad, separated by underscores, is, and I have to say which parameters does this function take. It will take 1 int parameter called x, 1 int parameter called y, and 1 final parameter that will be the diameter of the circle. So you can see now that here I'm calling the function. This is the definition of the function, and we have the same amount of parameters. Mouse x will become a variable called x inside the function. Mouse y will be stored inside the variable y while in this function. And this value here, this 200, will be stored in the variable d while this function is executed. We can add again some prints here if we want to make sure. I will just print the diameter for now. Let's print d. So now every time I click, I should get this 200 because I have specified here that I always want to have these circular gradients with this diameter, 200. Okay, let's get rid of our print. And now I can move all this block of code here, all these lines, inside the function. the first two lines where we choose two random colors. Then and here we are choosing the diameter of our circle, and this should be a variable, so we have to change this. And here's all this loop where we're drawing, in this case we were drawing 600 circles. This will change now. So I cut this with Ctrl X. So now the setup function becomes very small, and I'm going to paste here with Ctrl V all these lines inside our new function, draw circ grad. Okay, so let's use these variables now. X and Y should be used here. We don't want the ellipse anymore always at position 100, 100, but wherever we are telling the function to draw this gradient. Since we have here mouse X and mouse Y, so the gradient will be drawn wherever we have the mouse at the current position. And now let's use this D variable. Well, we will have a slight problem because we are here declaring this D variable, and here too we are declaring a D variable. They should have different names. So actually this variable should be max D. Here we had specified before that the max D, that's the size of the circle, was fixed. It was 600. Now we want to specify this in a parameter, so we just get rid of this variable here. We don't want a fixed size anymore, but now we can tell different sizes as a parameter. So this should work already. Let's try it out. I'm gonna run the program. By default it's all black, and now every time I click, I get a new gradient, whatever the mouse is. The borders don't look very nice, so I'm gonna add a smooth call here, smooth. So now they should look a little bit better. And see how easy now it is to change the size of our circle. We can make them smaller here. So now they will have a diameter of 100. Or we could make them random if we want. Random between 50 and 300, for example. So now every time we click, of course, random is returning a float value. And here we have specified that max D is an integer. So we can solve this in two ways. Either we type here a float, or if we don't want to touch our function, we should convert our random number into an integer, so it's compatible. This way we are sending an integer to our function, and now every time I click, I get our different random size. And finally, just let's refresh how we can load an image. Because the black background looks very empty at the beginning, it would be nicer to start with some picture there. So what I'm going to do is declare a p_image variable at the beginning. I will call it back. And when the program starts, I will say here that back equals to load image. And I have to now import an image into the project. I do this by going here to the sketch menu, add file. And if I go here to my desktop, I have a picture called screenshot PNG. So I add this. If we want to check that the picture is there, now I can go here to show sketch folder. And inside data, it should be the screenshot. And now here inside the load image, I can say screenshot.png. So now when the program starts, it loads this image into this variable. This variable is type p_image. And now that the image is loaded, I can draw the image to the screen using image. First I type which image. For now we just have one called back. And I want it in the top left corner. And let's run the program. And now here, this is a bit confusing because you see menus inside menus. But you can obviously see that this is the screenshot. And now I can draw on top of my image. So now we are ready for the next episode.